are here with Pamela Sloan for her main gallery show this month, Unearthed. I've been waiting for this show for, I think we met 3 years ago, about?
At least two,
yeah.
Maybe three.
And she was telling me about this new project, and I've just been chomping at the bit to see it, and I saw photos, and then to see it in person is really special.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for letting us exhibit this work. And so I have a few questions about it. So first of all, can you walk us through the process? So I know this is paper that you buried. What did you do to it after, if anything, or before? What was the process?
Well, the process evolves, but it's always the same in the beginning, which is that I take a heavy-duty watercolor paper and I put it in the soil, and then I cover it with soil or leaves and sticks or whatever I took out, I put back on top of it. That's always the same. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that's important to note is that it has to be in the ground for several months in order for anything noticeable to happen to it. So a lot of it depends on the moisture in whatever the climate is in the place that it's buried. I wanted to get more color into it after a while, so I did a little research and decided that I would coat part of the paper with alum. Mm. And alum is used as a mordant in dyeing to retain the color of dyes. I thought maybe it would retain some of the soil color, and it works. It really works in interesting ways. There's not a lot of color, and when I unearth the paper, generally it's wet and moist and there's an intense amount of color on the paper, but then as it dries it just fades. And so the colors in the work that you see are very subtle.
I love the coloration. Yeah, you're not dealing with necessarily a bunch of colors, but then you look deeper and deeper and there is a complexity to the color for sure.
Sometimes I will add some washes to the color if I want to bring something out. In the case of these little pieces around me here, I haven't done anything to them. Also in that piece right behind us, came out of the ground looking just like that. So what I'll do in that case is I will take the paper and I'll seal it. And I'll cover it with a matte medium, okay, so that anything that's on there stays there and nothing's growing anymore. And that's pretty much it. Some of the pieces are collaged with prints. So I did a lot of experimenting with paper. I taught Photoshop for 20 years, so I'm familiar with how to use that and how to print. I have a very nice printer, and I worked with several different types of paper and finally settled on what's called a Gampi rice paper, which will accept the ink and at the same time be thin enough so that I can collage it to the paper that I've dug up and still retain a lot of the texture underneath. So some of the pieces will have pieces of print on the print material.
So I wondered about that because I've seen like trees and things like that, and I couldn't tell if it was a print or if you actually painted before or after it was buried.
Those are put on afterwards. I've tried putting it on before and then it just doesn't work. And the prints are photos, taken from photos that I take, mm-hmm, whether it's the location where the paper is being buried or photos of pieces of paper that I photographed. So that little piece back there has been used in many of these pieces. It's been photographed and enlarged and then used in various ways.
So what sparked this concept? It is fascinating, and just the amount of experimentation that was probably required to just get it right, and also this patience, because you said it had to be under the ground for at least process. 4 months or something?
At least 3 to 4 months.
That patience, I could never
no.
have that kind of patience. I'd want to see it.
Well, I have a lot of paper at home that I haven't used in pieces, so there's a lot more than what you see here. But so what sparked it? Let me go back to your question. I think in 2021 or 22, I took a continuing ed course through the University of Illinois, and it was called Master Naturalist, and we were learning a lot about soil. I got really interested in what soil was about. I have a close friend who is an incredible artist. Her name is Judith Frelich, and she weathers her paper outside before she uses it, and it's always very beautiful, but she draws on it. And I thought, like, I wonder what will happen if I just take the paper and put it in the soil, let the soil do its thing and see what happens. And sure enough, it's a lot of really interesting things were happening.
So these works carry an earthy, delicate beauty, but also fragility. Do you consider them still alive in some way?
Okay, so this is a really interesting thing that I've come to realize. I didn't understand how alive soil is. And that might be a result of the fact that I grew up on the south side of Chicago, where there was no soil. Not real soil anyway.
Concrete.
There was a lot of concrete, and there was what you would call dirt, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing, I don't think, much living in that.
Right.
And when I realized how alive the soil was, that I realized that the decaying process is not one so much of death, but as a regeneration from perhaps the world that we live in up here, and then the world that exists underneath that we don't think about.
Right.
And to me, it's a way to connect people to soil and to understand that it's a vital part of our existence. And I know that for Leopold, everything is connected. All parts of the ecosystem and nature are connected and dependent on each other. And that's what drew me to his writing.
Well, in your work, it makes us stand in our tracks and recognize that, and that there is that connection. I mean, it's so beautifully conveyed in his work in a way that I've certainly never seen before.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I really hope that it conveys, even though it's essentially dirty paper, I really hope that it conveys a feeling of hope and positive attitude towards being the stewards of where we live, and not one of death or decay, even though that's exactly what it is. So, so for me, the dichotomy of life and death together is what gives my work meaning. I taught art for many years, and I learned that it's the balance between positive and negative, or between dark and light, or between happiness and tragedy. Those are the things that can create importance in a piece of art. And for me, it's being able to convey a feeling of life from something that's literally being decayed.
Well, because you can't have one without the other.
Exactly. Exactly.
The specific soil or place influence the final outcome.
It does, definitely. So it has to do with whatever the microorganisms and the minerals in the ground are, because the paper will interact with that and give off different colors. But when I took these papers out of the ground, they were an incredible blue. And when it dried, when it released all its moisture, it lightened up. I did emphasize it a little bit. That one has a little bit of blue on there. But I've learned, and I'll be speaking about this evening, but I've learned that the alum, which has potassium in it, interacted with the soil where there's iron to create quite literally Prussian blue. Prussian blue was invented by a guy who made a mistake, who was creating red, this was in the early 1700s, he was creating red paint and got potassium into it, and he got Prussian blue, which was revolutionary for artists. But the blues that are in this paper are quite literally Prussian blue chemically. It's the same chemical compound.
That's fascinating. It's so scientific.
I had no idea what was happening. Trust me. I was not trying to create Prussian blue, but I found out that's in fact what I did by fluke. It was a complete fluke.
Incredible.
The piece that's called Spotted Gila, those colors that came out of the ground are outrageous. The colors that came out of the ground were the Southwest. It was the South. Wasn't they? That was a crazy story. I'm not going to go into it now. But they sent me back those papers because when we went to get, nothing was on them. They were perfectly white, like they'd just gone on the ground because they hadn't had any rain. But after they had their monsoon, they dug this stuff out. The Forest Service did this, and they sent them to me. And I looked at these pieces, and I thought, oh my God, what happened? That piece right behind you, which is kind of a tribute to the famous painting called The Wanderer by Friedrich. The piece in the back, that kind of rust color piece, that's what was sent to me from the Southwest.
So if Aldo Leopold were here tonight for your exhibition, what conversation would you have, or what would you want him to
I would say thank you to him. Not as an artist, but as somebody who so respects his writing and his teaching and what he's done for us, you know, for the people who are involved in conservation. Yeah, I would just thank him.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say he'd be pretty impressed with this. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Please make sure to get down here. Her show is up all month long, and we'll pop this video up on our YouTube channel, but it's always such a joy to get to sit down with the artist and pick your brain.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And I love Burlington. I have to say, it's such a great town. And the people here are they're just from the heart type people. I just love it here.
Thank you so much.